1, and just give it like 2 seconds. You'll see the zeros up top.
Hi, and welcome to the Chaunty Show. Here with us today, we have filmmaker, YouTube creator, and self-published novelist on Amazon, MIKE MESSIER. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Hey, Chaunty, great to be here, and thanks for your understanding with the technology. We switched over to Zoom, and happy to be here with Chaunty.
Yes. All right, so let's jump right into the questions. So I'd like to start off with your novel, A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite, available now on Amazon. Could you tell us more about that?
Sure. The piece is right here in my very hand. This is a paperback version. So the paperback version is available on Amazon, and it's pretty easy to find. You just put the title in, A Distance from Avalon, Mike Messier, and it should show up. And basically, it's a piece that I originally worked on in a few different ways. I originally had a film project, Disregard the Vampire, and that project had kind of evolved into a documentary. And at some point, I decided to rewrite the original narrative script of Disregard the Vampire and change some elements to it, namely the female characters' names. I wanted to work on the female characters quite a bit, so their names became changed in the process, and I wanted to add stuff to it. And I wrote the piece as a stage play, a screenplay, and the novel. And during this last year or so, with this worldwide pandemic, I've tried to put more time into my writing, Chaunty, because, you know, without the ability to make films because of, you know, COVID restrictions and just the dangers of it, I wanted to put more time into my writing.
That's great. I'm glad that you decided to do that, because that book looks beautiful. And I can't wait to personally read that myself. So
great.
What inspired you to write this novel?
The cover is by Nazar Germanoff, who's also a filmmaker. What inspired me, you know, it's interesting. I started writing the story, Disregard the Vampire, which evolved into this in late 2013. And, you know, I had a friend of mine who was actually, believe it or not, kind of brought into a cult. You know, he was kind of brought into a cult situation, and he didn't even realize it. And I kind of got a glimpse into that world, to be honest with you. And it's not a pretty world to take a glimpse at. It's really pretty scary. So taking that element and kind of balancing it out, when I originally wrote the original piece, it was around September, October, which of course is Halloween time, especially in New England. It's pretty good time of year. And there was a movie that you might have seen called, I think it's called Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, which takes place in the swinging 60s, like the sexual revolution. And there's a partner swap in that movie. So I basically kind of took the idea of Halloween and the idea of cults and the idea of vampires, kind of got it in the mix. And the bait, so to switch, for these vampires to get their next victims would be a partner swap. You know, so the idea of a sexual trade of, you know, you take my lady, I'll take your guy, that type of thing. But with the catch that the perpetrators are vampires or something like vampires, that's what kind of inspired the whole thing.
That's really interesting. Wow. So you're also a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And you've won 35 awards in film direction, TV production, screenwriting, and playwriting, according to your IMDb. What was it like winning all of those awards?
Well, I should say, you know, just to updating news here, I actually woke up this morning and had 3 new awards that came through the Film Freeway. I got Alternative Film Festival gave that night, as you mentioned earlier, an award. You mentioned on the Facebook stream. That night got a new media web series award from Alternative Film Festival that stars our friends Mary Beth Paul and Brad Rhodes and Kathy Lachey Berenson. And from the same festival, my selfie video, Life Lessons Learned from Michael Jordan's Last Stand, got like a selfie award. And then from the Great Message International Film Festival, I think you mentioned on Facebook, I got an award for The Never Was. So the total is now 41. It's nice.
Wow.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thanks. It's good. It's good. I mean, it's validation, I guess, is probably the if you had to put a word on it, because the thing is, Shanti, it's no secret that artists, myself included, we're all kind of seeking validation of some kind, whether that comes through money, fame, power, whatever you think validation might be. For me, the real validation would be clout, being able to pick up the phone call, pick up the phone and call anybody I wanted to get any project I wanted to make. That would be the real validation. But these
Yeah.
awards they feel like they're a step in the right direction, that somebody's out there and cares. Hopefully, when I post, and I do a lot of posting on Facebook, hopefully people see that this thing won an award. They're more likely to click that button and actually watch the thing. It's
Yeah.
as you might have experienced, or maybe it's just me. Sometimes you post your stuff like crazy and you hope that people actually take the time to watch something. A lot of times they don't. They might give you the big blue thumbs up, and they might say, hey, good job, man. But you say, oh, what did you think about the piece? And people don't even watch it. So, hopefully these awards lead more people to actually watching the videos and going to Mike Messier YouTube channel and so on and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. I think that will, because I'm going to share the links on the Facebook video that I started, as well as when we put this up on YouTube, the link to this.
Thanks.
So that way more people can see it. So what are some of the films that you've produced and written?
Well, probably the one that people seem to relate to the most, or the most amount of people seem to relate to, is Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary. And I kind of beat the drum of that one quite a bit, but I feel that although there is an artistic bent to it, it really is a story about struggle and survival, and people coming together and working under really tough circumstances, circumstances of trying to make an independent film with very little budget. And the lead actor, left the project after filming had begun. So that put us kind of in a tailspin. And then there was issues with the weather and the equipment. So I feel that that project, which has won 11 awards on its own, including the best short doc from Havelock International Film Festival that I just got word of, that documentary tends to resonate with most people, especially filmmakers, because they can relate to the problems. And I think one thing about that film that people seem to relate to is I try to take it on with a sense of humor and also a sense of dignity. But if I threw anybody under the bus, it was really myself. I mean, I tried to take on the fact that that movie had problems under my own, like I brought some of the problems to the table, or I didn't cope with the problems the best way I could, or having the proper preparation. And so I think people respect the fact that the honesty is there, that I'm not trying to, blame this element or blame that element. I'm trying to explain that these elements are always going to exist in a film, maybe not to the extreme that we had them, but it's really up to the director to cope, and to an extent I did, because people enjoy the documentary. So I think that the big kind of, humor of the film, or the meta quality of it, is that people might say, hey, you didn't finish your movie, yet they're watching the movie that is not finished. They're watching the documentary version of the narrative film that wasn't finished. And for the most part, people are getting something out of it, so I think that's probably the film that resonates the most with people. But there's others. I mean, The Impeccable was a film I did with Ashley Shea and Naria Zakarian and Adam Lem from Bays, and that film has won 3 awards on its own. And that was more of a straight narrative piece. That was kind of my comfort zone, which is a dialogue driven story. And other pieces like The Nature of the Flame, Thanksgiving, all these pieces are on Mike Messier YouTube channel, and Blood Sugar Sedace, which was a feature I made back in 2011. Once again, for a very limited budget and for 4 actors in 1 location. Blood Sugar Sedace has its own website that people can check that out on, and most people seem to, find that one pretty interesting too.
What is the website?
It's bloodsugarsidace.com. I'll spell that out. It's BLOODSUGARSIDACE.com. It's an unusual title. It's the title is the 4 characters in the piece. So there's a blood character, sugar, Sid, and Ace. So the 4 lead characters they're the only characters of the movie, That's the name of the movie.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Thanks.
Yeah. You say a lot of very interesting things because you've done a lot of interesting things. And I like the titles that you've shared so far. I really do.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. In August 2019, The Hospital Bed, a 1-minute short, was filmed in Rhode Island. What could you tell us about that without telling us what the whole thing is about?
Well, it's only a 1-minute piece, you know, and people are more than welcome to go to Mike Messier YouTube channel and subscribe, as well as subscribe to Chaunty's YouTube channel. And please, that helps a lot. People don't realize that if you subscribe to Chaunty's channel, my channel, and you hit the alarm button, especially, at least for me, Chaunty, I won't speak for you, but I don't expect people to watch every single video on my channel. There's 900 videos up there, and about half of them are pro wrestling based. So I expect that a lot of people don't like pro wrestling, but they can watch the original films, the Suicide Girls, Burlesque, the Messier Mantra, all these things. As far as The Hospital Bed, that's on there. It's a 1-minute piece. And it's kind of creepy in a way because I filmed it in the hospital. Like I was literally in the hospital, you know, with a minor operation. And I guess I was just so, not to say bored out of my mind, but I just had a really kind of sick look to my face because I was sick, you know, like ill. So I you know, just kind of trying to maximize the time and the fact that I was here. I said, man, I might as well get a film out of this, even if it's a 1-minute film, because I was such in a state of mind of misery and physical pain. But I wanted to make a movie from the perspective of someone in the hospital, especially say someone who's dying, that they're not dead yet, you know, like they still have a little bit of life left into them. And I basically wanted it to be like the triumphant FU to the world from the perspective of someone on possibly their deathbed or their illness bed, you know, and that's why I filmed it. And that's gotten some recognition. People seem to relate to it because either most people at some point in their life, you know, after they were born, have been in a hospital with some type of injury or illness, or they know someone that has. And little did we know, Chaunty, 5 or 6 months after that thing was filmed, that, you know, this horrible pandemic would be taking over a lot of aspects of our lives. So,
Yeah.
you know, I've kind of retroactively labeled The Hospital Bed a coronavirus 1-minute film. In a sense it is, but the coronavirus wasn't quite with us when I made it.
Yeah, not officially like in the news, but it was probably around, I would assume, you know. But
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting and almost like foreshadows what was to come without realizing it.
I think about your previous guest, which I enjoyed your episode with our buddy Bob DeChico, and you know, that guy went through hell, and we were really, you know, we were really glad that Bob made it through because you know, we were really worried about him. So I'm glad that Bob did, and he had a nice interview with you on the last episode.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we all go through hard times. I appreciate that, and I'm just glad that we're all here. I think that everybody that's been on the show so far has struggled in some sort of way, professionally and or personally, you know, or both, and they're still with us. So that's pretty inspiring.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know, so the last piece that you directed in New England, summer 2019, That Night, was not finished until recently. And Messier Peace Theater presented it. What is Messier Peace Theater and when did it originate? And then also, 2-part question, what is That Night about?
Okay. I'll take the first part first. When I decided I'm here in Jacksonville, Florida, Atlantic Beach to be exact, and I decided to move here in February of 2019. And once I decided to move here, I had a couple of projects that I wanted to finish in Rhode Island. You know, for one, the Ox Baker, one of the boys video, that the footage had been, you know, kind of in transition for 5 years. So I wanted to finish that. I wanted to finish a few things, Chaunty. And one thing that I hadn't done is I hadn't filmed a narrative piece at the TV studio. You know, the Seekonk TV studio was always so good to me. First as the host of Short Film Showcase that Brian Casey produced, and then as the host and producer of my own show, Messier Mantra. So this studio was really good to me. And I don't know if I wanted to give back to them or just take more for myself, or both, and creating a narrative piece. So it's not really something that they do, or for the most part, public access studios aren't really built for narrative. They're just not. They're built more for interviews. But I wanted to push the limits, and I had this piece titled That Night that I had originally written for Mike Gonza's Play in a Day festival. It never got used for that festival through some casting, changes and stuff. So I wanted to bring this script back because I thought, man, this was probably one of the best scripts I wrote for this play festival, but it never got used. So the timing was such that I had a very small window, like 4 or 5 months between February and when, August would come, that I would start to move. And so I asked, I believe, Mary Beth Paul first if she would be in this, and she liked the script, so she agreed. And then the next part was the casting, and I kind of dug through, because the characters had to be in the ballpark of the same age was a big part of it. So I dug through my memory files and remembered Kathy Lachey Berenson, that I had written a piece that she acted in years ago for Seth Chitwood, Pat and Matrice. And I was like, man, that Kathy, what a great actress she is. But I only had kind of worked with her once before. And then I had just worked with Brad Rhodes on a piece called So You're the Guy about 4 months earlier, another short film, and with John Kennelly and Robert John Kennelly and Brad Rhodes. So the basic thing is that the pieces were kind of there. And then the thing was, how do I convince the TV studio that this would be a good idea? And I think they took sympathy on my plight. Maybe they were morbidly curious. And we did Messier Peace Theater, which was it's a 6-part series, and people can watch it on MikeMessier.com or the YouTube channel. It's got a whole playlist, but basically it's a 6-part series. And the idea was I wanted to break down my process for making a short film. I do feel that my process is a little bit different. I try to put a lot of time into rehearsing, or a decent amount of time into rehearsing and script breakdown and getting to know the actors. So the first 3 episodes, starting with Mary Beth's, are interviews with each actor. I interviewed Mary Beth for an episode, and then Kathy, and then Brad, and I showed their acting reels, or I showed our previous work together. Mary and I had never worked together, or Mary Beth, I should say, and I had never worked together before this piece, so that was unique for her too. And then the 4th episode was a table read, which we basically took the script and we kind of read it, and the actors offered some feedback on some tweaks to the words. And then the 5th one was blocking, which was probably the biggest challenge, because in a limited small soundstage like that at a TV studio, we did have a good set. It's just that you can't do everything you might want to do if you had on location shooting.
Yeah.
And then the 6th and final episode is pretty much that night. So what the narrative consists of, it's that there's 3 college students who've had a traumatic experience in college, which has to do with drugs and abuse of power and scandal and bullying and the school and sexism, quite frankly.
Wow, that's very relevant.
Right. And the idea is that this incident happened to these people when they were in college, which is, a little bit earlier in their lives. And the 3 characters who were all involved in this trauma and tragedy, they've moved on. And the victim of the tragedy, which Kathy plays, her character has never quite forgiven or forgotten. And the other 2 characters, one of them, I would say Brad's character, probably feels worse about it. And Mary Beth's character has gone on to become a TV show host and a pop culture psychiatrist or psychologist. And so Mary Beth, in a sense, has the antagonist role, but some might see her as the protagonist. Who knows? It depends on who's watching.
Yeah.
But it was a good piece. I wish I would like more people to watch it. I think sometimes people, even in this day and age, are a little hesitant to hook into something. It's kind of like a chicken and egg thing, Chaunty. It's like, how do you get people to watch something if they haven't watched it before? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think if people did watch it, they'd enjoy it, and so
Tell them, go watch it.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
That's your cue.
Yeah. But watch
Yeah.
this interview first.
Finish this interview first, and then watch that after, and watch everything else that we put up too, because I'm gonna add all the links to everything that we've mentioned, and the ones that you sent me to in the email.
Thanks.
Yes. All right. So you're also a YouTube sensation and creator. What type of content do you typically post? You mentioned that already, but
Sure, I'll get through it again.
a deeper dive.
Well, a deeper dive is that, the funny thing is, Chaunty, I didn't take YouTube, not to say seriously, but I didn't understand how to take it seriously until July of 2020. And I really was just hitting kind of a wall with YouTube. Like every once in a while, I get some good hits on something. But I just did oddly enough, I did a search on YouTube, how to get more YouTube hits, how to get more YouTube subscribers. And it got me into this Pandora's box of TubeBuddy and content creation, and these guys with names like Nick and all these different advisors. There's a whole subculture of YouTube videos that tell you how to get more likes and subscribers and watch times and what you need to do to get monetized. And so at the time, I think I only had about 260 subscribers. I still don't, I have about 571 subscribers right now, but I've had a pretty good growth in that since July until now, March of 2021. I've doubled my subscribers, and all my numbers are going up because I'm using this TubeBuddy platform. It's a paid per thing. I pay the $19 a month. Most people could probably pay the $4 a month, but I just have so many videos that I have to have all the resources available. But basically the idea is it helps you with thumbnails, it helps you with titles, it helps you with keywords, tag words, playlists. There's so much about making a good YouTube channel that it never occurred to me, and kind of the thing, if it's a life lesson for younger people out there, is that I probably could have had a really successful YouTube channel had I jumped on it in like 2005 or 2007 or 2003, whenever YouTube was really first getting going, because I had some stuff back then. If I had kind of put the 2 to 2 equals 4 together, I might have done really well for myself back then, but hopefully it's not too late. And for better or for worse, there's like 900 videos. I'd say about half of those are pro wrestling memories or pro wrestling rants. So if the pro wrestling fan is really going to be taken care of, I have some archive footage of the Suicide Girls burlesque from their opening burlesque shows, which are pretty scandalous and risque, and hopefully they won't be blocked or banned anytime soon, but they're up there. They're pretty wild, especially in their early days of the Suicide Girls. I've got the Messier mantra, which I think I've got over 100 episodes now of interviews with people, like Bob DeChico was on the show, Arthur Hugh was on the show, Tommy DiNucci, David Gear, a lot of people were on the Messier mantra show. The wrestling guy, yeah, really good people from New England. CONRAD THOMPSON. I had fight promoters like Jimmy Birchfield. A lot of New England people. Our buddy Billy V was on the show 3 times. I know Billy V is fighting very hard against cancer right now. So the Billy V episodes.
Billy V.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And
yes.
So what else is on the Messier? Mike's original playlist and films, all types of stuff. So.
All right, great. So at what point in your life did you realize that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
I took a TV production class in high school, Chaunty, which, and I started taking that after I had made a couple of music videos using a really old school system of 2 VCRs and a boombox. Like for some reason, back in the day, the way to kind of pirate videos or make copies for your friends was to take 2 VCRs and hook up the RCA switches, which is like the yellow, the white, and the red, And I discovered through trial and error that if I hooked up a boombox to the audio instead of the other VCR, I could manipulate videos so that I was getting audio from one source and video from another. So that's how I started making music videos. And probably the first one that I made was for the song Rocket Man by Elton John. And it was a high school class project. And basically, instead of like writing some big project or doing something else, I put 5 or 6 hours into making a music video. And a friend of mine, Brian Mora at the time, had a video camera, and this is pretty old school stuff. This is like VHS tape cameras. And we went out and shot footage in Burke, Virginia, where I grew up. And, you know, you can see this crazy video on Mike Messier YouTube channel. You can see like a real slice of life from the suburbs of that time. And so I think that's what kind of started it, Chaunty. And then about, you know, maybe 5 or 6 years later, I was in college, and a friend of mine, George Lamastro, wanted to make a film, but he didn't have any low budget ideas. He had big budget ideas. And this is when we had mini DV tapes were the big thing. Like, you know, Canon DXLR, I think was the camera, you know. So these were when we had tapes, we were happy to have them, you know, and these were like $2,500 cameras, which were state at the art at the time.
Wow.
But we went out and we made a movie called Man and You, a Providence love story. So it took us 1.5 years to make a movie that was 80 minutes long. And at the time, I remember thinking, God, this is taking forever to make this movie. When I look back at that now, I'm like, man, to make a 80-minute movie in 1.5 years is pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad at all, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes things just take that long, you know, because they're gonna come out better quality. They're just some, you know what I mean? Like some
Yeah.
projects just require that much attention.
Well, that's true. And you're right about that. You know,
Yeah. So, what inspired you to begin your YouTube channel? Was it the fact that you had all these films and videos to share?
Well, I guess I'll say this, you know, what inspired me to, I would say I've had it for a while, but it just I wasn't taking it seriously because I didn't really know how to take it seriously. And I
Yeah.
think, Chaunty, what the catalyst over this last summer, why to take the YouTube channel more seriously? Because I always thought that monetizing was out of my reach. Like, I didn't understand that you only need 1,000 subscribers and so many watch time hours. I thought it was like this vague concept that was not within my reach, right? And so I was mostly putting my better stuff, like the Messier mantras, on Vimeo. And Vimeo is a great platform, but for the most part, there's no way to get your money back. It's just, for whatever reason, maybe beta versus VHS is the same thing. Like, people have just chosen, they've migrated to YouTube. They haven't migrated to Vimeo. And as a result, Vimeo does not have an instant payoff. You know, like, they don't have ad sales, right? So the downside that I look back, once again, a life lesson maybe for others is, you know, in this particular situation, I was so hung up on, I don't want my Messier mantras to be interrupted by commercials, or I don't want my short films to be interrupted by commercials. So I would spend so much time sharing the links to this content on Vimeo, not realizing I was kind of shortchanging myself from ads on YouTube or subscribers on YouTube. So when that kind of clicked in for me, Chaunty, is when I said, man, I gotta put more emphasis on YouTube and use Vimeo as like a online platform of storage rather than as my main sharing resource.
That's pretty cool. I like how that you decided to do that, because what you said makes sense about how they pay you back a certain amount when you monetize things, depending on view hours and whatever else they base it on. So where do you find your inspiration to write?
That's a great question, Chaunty. I mean, you know, a lot of times there's like a trickle of dialogue, like maybe I'll just hear somebody say something, or I'll say something myself that sounds interesting or unique. And then that'll be like, well, if this sentence was said out loud, what circumstance could it be said between two characters where one character said this thing to another character? And then it's like, what's their prior relationship? And then it's like, what's the crisis of the moment, or what's the decision they have to make, or what's the argument that they have to have? So for me, I'm really a dialogue writer. And, you know, some people don't like that. You know, some people are so hung up on the visuals, and visuals are, of course, a big part of all this, but for me, I'm a dialogue writer, so I don't shy away from that. You know what I mean? And so for me,
As
it's
you should.
usually, yeah, thanks. So for me, it's usually like some type of dialogue segment that pops into my head or I hear from the outside world, and then I just kind of take the ball and run with it.
That's pretty cool. So what do you do when you have writer's block?
That's a good question. I'll be honest with you. That's not, for me, I don't get writer's block as I don't make the time to write as much as I probably should or would like to. So I don't necessarily get a block. I don't make the time to write as much as I would want to.
Okay.
So that's kind of my problem. Everyone's got different issues with writing, and writer's block is a huge thing. But for me, the block is more like just sitting down, concentrating, not checking all the things in the world, social media and everything else, and just focusing on the writing. That's the bigger challenge for me.
Yeah. Okay. So what advice do you have for someone who is just getting into filmmaking?
I would say the best advice I could have, Shanti, and like yourself that you've done for years, is generate your own projects and create your own content. I think the biggest thing, and I've done acting coaching as well with core acting and Dalzan acting. I think the biggest thing that people are reluctant to do is to create their own content. And that's the best thing you can do is make your own movies, make your own podcasts like you are doing, and make your own selfie videos and try to make them good, but I think a lot of people are waiting for that phone to ring, or they're sending out applications as an actor or actress or resumes, and they're so hung up on what does somebody else want out of me, or how can someone else use me for their project. Make your own project. That's my advice.
All right. That's beautiful advice.
Thanks.
So what can the future expect out of Mikey Messier?
Well, I did bring out this little thing. This was nice. The Tabloid Witch Awards, once again, that was one of the better plaques from one of these awards for Disregard the Vampire, a Mike
That's
Messier
beautiful.
documentary. Yeah, it's really nice. The Tabloid Horror Witch Awards. I wanted to give them a shout out. And so I'd say that for me, what I really want to concentrate on creatively is to write the sequel to this book, A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunite. I do have some ideas for sequels, and I just have to write them. And so when the time is right, whether that's 6 months or a year from now, I'd like to start filming something again. That's a great cup. The Hello Kitty, that's awesome. But I guess for me, it's like I'd rather do things safely as far as this COVID stuff. So I'm going to concentrate on writing for now and pushing the things I've already finished, like Messier Peace Theater and other projects. So You're the Guy and all these things that are on the Mike Messier YouTube channel, trying to promote the things that are already done before moving on to something else.
That's always a good thing to do. That's a good rule of thumb. All right. Excellent. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Mikey, for joining us on the show today and for making it a great episode of the Chaunty Show. Also, huge thanks for those of you tuning in to today's episode, today's live show. And this wraps up today's show. So everybody stay safe and have a great week.
Can I say one last thing, Shanti? Thank you for having me on the show. And I know our buddy Arthur Hugh was out here watching, and Arthur Hugh's a big supporter of the Shanty Show. And he and I wrote a script together called The First Betrayal. And a lot of people from New England are very supportive of that. So Arthur always says hi to Shanty. And Shanty, I want to thank you for being my friend and having me on the show. It's been great.
All right, no problem. Yeah, so we'll put up the link for the rest of the stuff later, and everybody stay safe. Okay, so I think that went pretty good.